It's going to be a full house tomorrow, so I'm really very excited to see atmosphere.
Something unusual happened in Toronto, and it had very little to do with the player sitting at the top of the WTA rankings. The moment Alex Eala stepped onto the court, the entire atmosphere changed. Thousands of fans were chanting her name, and a second-round match suddenly felt like one of the biggest events of the tournament. But this story had started days earlier in Washington, where Eala had just defeated world number 3 Jessica Pegula 6-4, 6-0 to win the biggest singles title of her career and become the first Filipino to win a WTA singles trophy. She arrived in Canada with a trophy in her bag and an entire country behind her. Then Toronto delivered another shock. Eala's opening session reportedly sold thousands of tickets within minutes, forcing organizers to move her from the smaller grandstand to the much larger center court. That was the same stage where the world number 1 had already played. Suddenly, Eala wasn't being treated like just another rising star. She was becoming one of the tournament's biggest attractions. The crowd made that impossible to ignore. Filipino flags filled the stands, chants erupted between points, and the chair umpire repeatedly had to ask for silence before serves. Some crowd behavior sparked debate, but the bigger message was clear. Eala had turned a regular match into an event. Then came the real test. Against Alicia Parks, Eala dominated the opening set 6-1, only to lose the second 6-4. The momentum shifted, the crowd became quieter, and for the first time that night Eala had to deal with the pressure surrounding her. But she responded like a player ready for a much bigger stage, taking the deciding set 6-2. Afterward, she didn't talk about rankings or ticket sales. She simply thanked the fans. That calm response may have been the most important part of the night, because while the tennis world was beginning to see Alex Eala as a phenomenon, Eala was still focused on one thing: winning the next match. And Toronto may have just revealed that her biggest battle of the summer is no longer only happening on the court. But the biggest twist was that Eala's rise was no longer just about winning matches. It was starting to change the atmosphere around entire tournaments. Toronto had already shown the commercial power of her fan base, but the reaction became even more interesting when comparisons with Aryna Sabalenka began circulating. Sabalenka was still the world number 1, still one of the most dominant players on tour, and still one of the biggest names in women's tennis. Yet Eala was creating a different kind of energy. Her supporters weren't simply watching. They were traveling, buying tickets, filling social media feeds, and turning every appearance into an event. That matters because women's tennis is always searching for stars who can connect with audiences beyond the traditional rankings. Eala appears to be developing exactly that connection, especially among Filipino fans across North America. And there was another reason the timing mattered. Eala wasn't arriving in Toronto after one lucky upset. She had been building momentum across several tournaments, showing that her breakthrough in Washington was part of a much larger progression. Her game had become more complete, her confidence had grown, and she was beginning to handle opponents who previously would have been considered major favorites. That made every new match more intriguing. Fans weren't asking whether Eala could compete anymore. They were asking how far she could go. Even more importantly, her success was putting pressure on the players waiting on the other side of the draw. The deeper she advanced, the bigger the spotlight became. And with the US Open approaching, that spotlight was about to get much brighter. Eala's name was now being connected to some of the biggest players in the world, and a potential collision with Sabalenka suddenly looked less like a fantasy and more like a matchup fans genuinely wanted to see. But before New York, there was still another tournament standing between Eala and the biggest stage of the summer. And that next stop could reveal whether Toronto was the beginning of something historic, or simply the opening chapter. And that brings us to the matchup everyone is starting to talk about. The US Open is no longer just another tournament on Eala's schedule. It could become the stage where her new status is finally tested against the biggest names in the sport. With Eala and Aryna Sabalenka potentially on a collision course, the storyline almost writes itself. Sabalenka has the ranking, the experience, the power, and the confidence that comes with being world number 1. Eala has something different: momentum, belief, and a fan base that has shown it will follow her anywhere. But tennis doesn't care about ticket sales or social media numbers. Once the first ball is served, none of that matters. Eala will have to handle Sabalenka's heavy hitting, survive the biggest points, and prove that her recent victories were not simply a hot streak. And that's what makes this potential clash so fascinating. Eala has already defeated major names, won a WTA title, and shown that she can recover when a match suddenly turns against her. Now she has the chance to step into a completely different level of pressure. If she reaches that matchup, millions of fans will be watching not just to see whether she can win, but to find out whether the young Filipina who has taken over the conversation can actually challenge the player sitting at the top of the sport. Whatever happens, one thing has already changed. Eala is no longer arriving at tournaments hoping people notice her. People are already waiting for her. Toronto proved that. Washington proved that. And the next few weeks could prove whether this is the beginning of a genuine new era for Filipino tennis. The ranking may still belong to Sabalenka, but Eala is building something rankings cannot measure, the ability to make people care. And if she keeps winning, the question won't be whether she belongs among the biggest stars. It will be how long the tennis world can keep pretending she isn't already one of them. And that brings us to the matchup everyone is starting to watch closely. The US Open is no longer just another tournament on Alex Eala's calendar. It could become the stage where her new status is tested against the biggest names in women's tennis. If Eala and Aryna Sabalenka meet, the contrast could not be more interesting. Sabalenka has the ranking, experience, power, and confidence that comes with being world number one. Eala has something different: explosive momentum, growing belief, and a fan base that has already shown it will follow her across continents. But once the first ball is served, none of those numbers or headlines will matter. Eala will have to deal with Sabalenka's heavy shots, protect her serve under pressure, stay aggressive on returns, and remain composed when the biggest points arrive. That is the real test, because defeating a top player once can be called an upset. Continuing to challenge the elite means proving that the level is sustainable. Eala has already given us plenty of evidence that she is moving in that direction. She won her first WTA singles title in Washington, defeated world number 3 Jessica Pegula in the final, then arrived in Toronto and immediately became one of the tournament's biggest attractions. Even when her match against Alicia Parks became complicated after losing the second set, she didn't panic. She reset and closed the deciding set 6-2. Those moments matter because they reveal something statistics can't fully capture. Eala is becoming comfortable in uncomfortable situations, and that could be the quality that carries her furthest. The spotlight will only get brighter from here. Every victory will create bigger expectations. Every upset will make opponents prepare more carefully. Every packed stadium will add another layer of pressure. Yet Eala continues to look remarkably composed through it all. She isn't trying to become someone else. She's simply becoming a stronger version of the player she already was. For Filipino fans, that makes this run about much more than tennis. They are watching one of their own step onto stages that once seemed impossibly far away. And for the rest of the tennis world, the message is becoming harder to ignore. Alex Eala is no longer the surprise name on the draw. She is becoming the name other players have to prepare for. So when the US Open arrives, the biggest question may not be whether Eala can survive against the favorites. It may be whether the favorites are ready for the confidence coming from the other side of the net. Sabalenka may still own the number 1 ranking, but Eala has already shown she can change the atmosphere wherever she plays. Washington gave her the trophy. Toronto gave her the spotlight. New York could give her the defining opportunity of the summer. And if she turns that opportunity into another statement victory, the conversation around Alex Eala will change forever. Because at that point, nobody will be asking whether she belongs among the world's best. They will be asking who can actually stop her.